Welcome back, everyone, to Echoes of Ihsan for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at the Muwatta Imam Malik, Book 29, Divorce.
Oh, yeah.
Now, before you switch off thinking, divorce, how boring, this book is actually really fascinating because it gives us real insight into how these early Islamic scholars
Right.
grappled with really tough questions about relationships.
Absolutely. What's really striking about the Muwatta is how it presents these rulings, these legal pronouncements through real stories, real people. So you're not just reading abstract laws, you're actually getting these glimpses into almost like a courtroom drama from centuries ago.
So like almost a historical soap opera.
A little bit, yeah. There's drama, there's
I
emotion.
love that.
You get to see how these early Muslims were applying these divine principles to really complex and, let's be honest, messy human situations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as you said, the book really comes alive with all these stories. And that seems to be a theme throughout.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
mean, it starts off, the first topic it tackles is this idea of the irrevocable divorce.
Mm.
These pronouncements, that once they're spoken, there's no going back. It's heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And then it just dives straight into a story.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a great story. This man goes to Ibn Abbas, renowned scholar, companion of the Prophet, and he's like, I've divorced my wife 100 times.
100.
100 times.
That's a lot of divorces.
It is, isn't it? And Ibn Abbas, known for his wisdom, replies calmly that the divorce is only valid 3 times.
Wow.
The other 97 pronouncements,
Yeah.
meaningless.
Yeah.
As if, he explains, the man was mocking the divine verses.
It's like you would say, it's not just about saying the words over and over again.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the weight, the sanctity of these pronouncements. It's about understanding their place within Islamic law.
And I guess that respect for the divine pronouncements is further highlighted in that anecdote with Abdullah ibn Masud.
Yes.
Right, where the man's like, oh, I divorced my wife 8 times.
8 times, yeah. He was clearly distraught.
Confused.
Ibn Masud's response is so powerful. He basically says, those who truly follow Allah's guidance won't find themselves in such a predicament. It's like a gentle reminder to really understand what you're doing before you utter these words.
It's like if you're following the map properly, you're not going to end up in this
Yeah.
weird situation.
Exactly. You won't get lost.
Strikes.
You'll know the boundaries.
Okay, so we've talked about the number of times, but what about if you don't actually say, I divorce you directly?
Yes, this is where things get really interesting. We move into the realm of indirect statements, metaphors.
Yeah.
People don't always say things directly, especially when it comes to sensitive issues like divorce,
Especially back then.
especially back then. But the intention behind the words, that's what matters in Islamic law.
Yeah, and that story about Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second caliph,
Yeah.
and that phrase, your reign is on your withers.
Oh, that's a classic. I love that story.
That was amazing.
So, Umar hears about this man in Iraq who said this to his wife, your reign is on your withers. Now, to most people, this sounds like a totally random statement, right?
Yeah.
But Umar, known for his sharp intellect, senses there's something more to it.
Yeah, and I just love how he calls this man from all the way in Iraq to Mecca during Hajj just to explain himself.
It's amazing, isn't it?
That's dedication to justice.
But the man shows up and Umar's like, what did you mean by that phrase? And the guy admits that, yeah, he actually meant it as a way of saying they're separated, a roundabout way of initiating divorce.
So even though he didn't say those exact words, Umar recognizes that the intention was there.
Exactly. It's all about intent. And this principle of intention, it runs through Islamic jurisprudence.
It's huge, yeah.
It's not just about the literal words, but what's in the heart, the meaning behind them.
And then you get to those more, shall we say, blatant statements. Ali ibn Abi Talib's view, when a husband declares, you are haram for me, meaning forbidden.
Yeah, that's a powerful statement. Ali ibn Abi Talib, the 4th caliph, considered this equivalent to 3 pronouncements of divorce.
Oh, wow.
It underscores how seriously Islam takes marriage, the sanctity of that bond.
Because, I feel like nowadays people say these things.
They throw those words around
Exactly.
without understanding the weight they carry.
Yeah.
But this shows you that words have power, especially within the context of marriage.
Now, here's where things get really interesting. The book introduces this concept of a husband giving his wife the right to divorce herself.
Ah, yes.
Now, this is something that I think, might surprise some people because it kind of challenges our assumptions about power dynamics within marriage.
Absolutely. It shows how much agency women were given within Islamic law.
And of course, like everything else we've talked about, There are different opinions and various scenarios presented.
It wouldn't be Islamic jurisprudence without those nuances, right? So there's a story, Harija ibn Zayd ibn Thabit, a scholar. He clarifies that giving a wife this right, it actually limits her to one pronouncement. Even if she tries to do it multiple times, it only counts as one.
So even though she has the power, there are still boundaries in place.
Exactly. It's about protecting everyone involved, ensuring both parties understand what they're agreeing to. And then there's that case brought before Marwan ibn al-Hakam. The husband, in this case, he had made an oath limiting his wife's self-divorce to just one pronouncement.
Even if she tries to do it 3 times.
Even if she tries, it only counts as one.
Wow. So it's like individual agreements and oaths can sometimes come into play as well?
They do, and that's what's so fascinating about Islamic law. It's about striking this balance. You have these general principles, but you also have to consider the individual circumstances, the nuances of each situation. It's not just about blind rule following. It's about finding justice and compassion for everyone involved.
Yeah, it's really about achieving those just outcomes in the best way possible.
Absolutely, and it requires knowledge, wisdom, and careful consideration.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always easy, but that's the beauty of it, right? The Muwatta, it's a guide, a roadmap for navigating these complex issues in a way that honors both the divine law and the human heart.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the Muwatta Imam Malik.
As we're going through Book 29,
Yes.
it's really striking how this collection of rulings and these stories that are like woven in between them, it really shows how much care and attention was given to these really kind of sensitive issues. It's not just about like the law, the legal pronouncements. It's about understanding the human impact, the emotional side,
Absolutely.
and all of the kind of complexities that come with separation.
I completely agree. And I think that really comes through in this next section, which is about the divorce of virgins. Now, at first you might think, well, divorce is divorce, right?
Yeah.
But as we've already seen, Islamic jurisprudence,
Right.
it really goes deep into the specifics. What's so unique about the divorce of a virgin in this context?
Well, what the Muwatta highlights is that there's a difference between pronouncements that just separate a virgin from her husband and those that make her permanently unlawful to him. It's this interesting concept. And, for those maybe not familiar with Islamic legal thought, it might seem strange, but it really shows the impact that divorce can have on a woman's future.
Especially if she hasn't had that experience of intimacy yet.
Right. It's about her prospects, her social standing.
Her future relationship.
Exactly. And so the book, it goes into how many pronouncements are needed for each scenario, and it shows how much care and attention was given to protecting women, especially those who are seen as more vulnerable because they haven't been married before.
Right. And it acknowledges those societal norms and expectations surrounding virginity and making sure that a woman's future isn't jeopardized.
Unnecessarily. It's like having these safeguards in place to protect the vulnerable.
Now, of course, the book doesn't only focus on the woman's experience.
Right.
It also looks at these complexities of divorce from the man's perspective.
Yeah.
And one section that really stood out to me is about the divorce of terminally ill men.
It's a poignant section for sure.
Because there you have all these questions about intention, inheritance, what happens to the wife that's left behind.
Absolutely. And, the Muwatta explores whether a man on his deathbed can issue a divorce. What are the implications of that? You have to consider, is he doing this because he genuinely wants a separation? Or is he trying to secure his wife's financial future after he's gone?
Right. So you really have to understand the context.
You can't just look at the legal pronouncement in isolation. You have to understand the motivations. What's really going on here?
What's in his heart.
Exactly.
And what about the wife? How is she impacted by this?
Well, the book emphasizes that these pronouncements are actually considered valid, even if the main intention is to ensure her inheritance. It's like this recognition that even in those final moments, a man might be thinking about his wife's well-being.
How she's going to cope when he's no longer there.
Yeah, it's quite beautiful, actually.
Yeah.
A testament to love and responsibility, even as the marriage is coming to an end.
Right.
And of course, the book goes into detail about her inheritance rights in these scenarios.
Because she could be so vulnerable at that time.
Absolutely. She's grieving. She's in a fragile state. The law steps in to protect her interests.
Right.
Make sure she's not taken advantage of.
And that brings us nicely to the concept of compensation for divorced women.
Yes.
Which I think is often misunderstood.
It is. And the Muwatta does a good job of explaining the reasoning behind this compensation. Marriage, even if it ends, there's been contributions from both sides.
Right. And, people often think about it purely in terms of finances.
Hmm.
But it's about recognizing that the woman has brought value to the marriage,
Exactly.
whether it's through her work in the home, her support emotionally for her husband, or the effort she puts into raising children.
Absolutely. It's about valuing her contributions
Yeah.
and making sure that she's not left completely empty-handed.
Right. When things come to an end.
Exactly.
Now, is there a set amount of compensation that she's entitled to?
Well, the Muwatta doesn't give a fixed formula.
Oh, okay.
It acknowledges that every situation is different. So the amount should be determined based on factors like how long the marriage lasted, how much each party contributed financially,
Okay.
and any other circumstances surrounding the divorce.
So it's about being fair
Yeah,
and equitable on a case-by-case basis.
precisely. Again, it's that balance of general principles and the nuances of real life.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of specific rulings, different scenarios,
Yeah.
but Book 29 also gives us these broader perspectives on divorce. It's like a reminder that this topic has been discussed and debated for centuries.
Oh, absolutely. Throughout Islamic history, scholars have been wrestling with these questions.
Yeah.
Trying to understand how to apply these divine principles to these ever-evolving human relationships.
The one example that really stood out to me was the differing opinions about the timing of pronouncements. There's this fascinating conversation between Abdullah ibn Umar,
Yes,
who is a renowned scholar,
the son of the second caliph.
yeah, and this man who divorced his wife while she was menstruating.
Oh, interesting.
And this brings us back to the concept of the waiting period,
Iddah.
the iddah.
Right. That period of time a woman has to wait after divorce before she can remarry.
So crucial within Islamic law.
It is. It serves multiple purposes.
Yeah.
There's the element of reflection, the possibility of reconciliation, and importantly, making sure that she's not pregnant before entering a new marriage.
Right. And so in this case, pronouncing the divorce during menstruation.
Yeah.
It raised questions about whether the divorce was valid.
Yeah. It gets complicated, doesn't it?
It does.
Even something as seemingly straightforward as saying, I divorce you, you have to consider the timing, the woman's cycle, the possibility of pregnancy.
So what did they do?
Well, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he was consulted about this, and he advised the man to take his wife back and wait until she finished a full cycle and a period of purity before pronouncing the divorce again.
So it's all about understanding the nuances.
Absolutely. Even those seemingly small details, they matter.
Yeah, they can have significant implications.
They can. And the book goes on to discuss the iddah period in other contexts.
Okay.
Widows, women who've been divorced multiple times, women whose husbands are missing or presumed dead. It's all covered. It's a testament to how comprehensive Islamic law is. It addresses so many different life situations.
It's really remarkable. These rulings formulated centuries ago, and they still provide this really strong framework for dealing with all these complexities of human relationships.
And it's not just about ancient pronouncements. It's about principles that are designed to bring order, justice, and compassion to human life.
Which can be pretty messy sometimes.
It can be, definitely. But, Islamic law isn't stuck in the past. It's a living tradition. It evolves through scholarly discussion and interpretation.
Yeah.
It adapts to the changing realities of human experience.
And the Muwatta Imam Malik really gives us a glimpse into that rich tradition.
It does. And it encourages us to approach these matters with both reverence for the divine word and a deep understanding of the human heart.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the Muwatta Imam Malik, specifically Book 29, which, as we've seen, really delves into all these different facets of divorce in Islamic jurisprudence.
One of the things that continues to amaze me as we go through this book is just how many different scenarios are covered. It's not just about, the legal pronouncements themselves, but also, how separation impacts people emotionally, socially, practically. It's like we're getting this really intimate look into the lives of people from centuries ago. It's true. And what's remarkable is how relevant those insights and that guidance remains, even today. I mean, take, for instance, the situation of a woman whose husband is missing. Imagine the uncertainty, the anxiety. You're caught between hoping for his return and the need to move forward with your life.
That must have been incredibly difficult. Like, how do you even begin to process that? What does Islamic law say about those kinds of situations?
Well, the Muwatta offers a specific ruling attributed to Umar ibn al-Khattab. He stated that a woman in this situation, she has to wait for 4 years.
4 years? That's a long time to live in limbo.
It is a significant period, yeah. But it reflects the gravity of the situation. It allows time for any news to come to light or for information to surface about the missing husband, while also recognizing that life can't be put on hold indefinitely.
So after those 4 years, what happens? Does she just assume he's gone and move on?
Not exactly. The book clarifies that after those 4 years, the woman, she then observes an iddah for 4 months and 10 days, the same as a divorced woman.
Right, to make sure there's no chance of pregnancy.
Exactly. It provides that confirmation and also that period of transition, of closure.
So there's a clear process, a framework. It acknowledges that period of hope, but then provides a pathway for her to remarry, build a new life if she chooses.
Right. And the book even addresses what happens if, after all that time, the missing husband returns. Imagine that.
Oh, wow, the drama.
Right. He comes back and his wife has remarried. What happens then?
I'm on the edge of my seat. What does the Muwatta say?
Well, it states that the first husband, he actually has no right to reclaim his wife, regardless of whether the new marriage has been consummated or not.
Wow, so the new marriage takes precedence.
It does. It prioritizes the stability of that new union, the emotional bonds that have formed. It prevents the woman from being pulled back and forth, potentially manipulated or pressured.
Right, it protects her well-being and her right to choose. It gives that new family a sense of security.
Exactly. Now, moving on from those more dramatic situations, the Muwatta also gives guidance on what you might think are more mundane matters, like where a woman should observe her iddah. You might think, well, does it really matter where she spends those few months?
Right. But again, like we've been saying, Islamic jurisprudence, it really pays attention to those
Well, it
details.
does, and it recognizes that those details can have a real impact on a woman's well-being, her dignity, especially during a vulnerable time.
It's those small acts of kindness and consideration that can make a world of difference.
Exactly. So the book, it shares several stories and rulings that highlight the importance of the woman remaining in her marital home until her iddah is complete. It's about providing a familiar environment, a sense of stability, protecting her from potential harassment or judgment.
There's that story about Aisha,
Yeah.
right, intervening when a woman was taken from her home by her father after being divorced.
Yes. Aisha, known for her wisdom and her deep understanding of Islamic teachings, she recognized that removing the woman from her home would only add to her distress.
Right. He
Yeah.
could expose her to all sorts of social pressures.
Exactly, and she made sure the woman was returned to her home where she had the right to remain.
It's like the home becomes a sanctuary.
It does, a place of refuge and stability. And the book even clarifies who's financially responsible during this time. The husband, he has to cover the rent. If he can't, then it falls to the woman, and if she can't, then the state steps in.
Like this amazing safety net.
It is. It's a system designed to protect the woman, make sure her basic needs are met, that she's not left destitute.
It's that compassion that we see woven throughout Islamic law.
Absolutely. It's not just about rules. It's about caring for people, especially those facing difficult circumstances.
Okay, so before we wrap up our deep dive into Book 29, there's one more concept I wanted to touch on. That idea of the two arbiters mentioned in the Quran.
Yes, those individuals appointed from both the husband's and wife's families to help the couple reconcile if there are problems.
It's that emphasis on mediation, trying to mend the relationship if possible.
Exactly. It recognizes that divorce shouldn't be the first resort. There's value in seeking counsel, exploring other options, trying to heal those broken bonds.
It's acknowledging that marriage involves families, communities. There's this whole social fabric.
And the book clarifies that these arbiters, their decisions, they hold weight. It shows how seriously Islam takes their role in trying to resolve these marital disputes.
It's fascinating how the law, while being rooted in the divine, also values that human element, that wisdom that comes from experience, from knowing the couple personally.
It's a reminder that even in those deeply personal matters like marriage and divorce, we're not alone. There are people, resources, support systems that can guide us through those tough times.
So as we come to the end of our deep dive, what would you say are the key takeaways from Book 29?
Well, I think it's a powerful reminder that while divorce is permitted in Islam, it should always be a last resort. It should only be pursued after all other avenues have been exhausted, and it should always be done in a way that prioritizes justice, compassion, and the well-being of everyone involved.
Beautifully said. And for our listeners, we encourage you to keep exploring the Muwatta, to delve into these rich teachings and discover for yourselves this timeless wisdom. We hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and perhaps even inspired you to approach these matters in a more informed and compassionate way.
And until next time, may peace and blessings be upon you all.